as we discuss all issues related to men. We are unifying family, building you, building strong families, building strong futures. Join us on Men on Monday.
Well, let me officially say good morning and welcome to Men on Monday. It is the 7th day of March. I am just amazed at the way time is flowing swiftly by. It is the 7th day of March, and we're together with the gentlemen this morning, and we are talking intimacy. We continue in our Teach Me to Love series. Today, it's intimacy, real intimacy. What is it? I am telling you. And I've had some discussions with some people as we were leading up to this, and it's interesting how some of us view intimacy. Some think about intimacy as only what happens in the bedroom. Some talk about a spiritual connection. Some talk about another connection on another level. So we're exploring it. We have Bishop Mark with us. Good morning to you, Bishop Edison Bino and Minister Sinclair Brown, all with us, the men, and I'm your host, Marissa Boyce. It's good to have you with us this morning as we talk about real intimacy. Good morning, gentlemen. How was your weekend?
Now, let me jump in first. Mine was wonderful. I'm glad to be alive, to be found on the right side. That is breathing. God has truly been good, and it's good to be here. Welcome to everyone, and well, we look forward to a very interesting discussion this morning. God bless.
Amen. Glad to hear, Bishop Mark. Well, I had a great weekend. I think God has been good. I got the opportunity to date my wife. So we're talking about intimacy. So I had opportunity to spend some quality time with her. And I had great Sunday morning service. Really experienced God moving by His Spirit. So just want to shout out all the church family at Sharon Oaks Pentecostal Church. But I had a good weekend.
Oh, dear. Brothers dating, Father. Intimacy.
Meanwhile, I
I
have not
get
been
to
out on a
date,
date.
you know. I get to date, my back hurt me, so I get the sex nor the dating. My back. So pray for me, name of Jesus. Blessings to all of you. Blessings. I'm looking forward to today's session. Amen.
I was just joking about dating. That's a joke we had off air, about not being able to go date because of workload and other demands. But I'm glad that you gentlemen have been enjoying the opportunity to date your wives and have good opportunities with them. I also want to get started before we get started and jump right into our heavy discussion today about real intimacy. Don't forget that Bishop Edison Bino has a book out. Check out his book, and it's called Eight Success Factors for a Healthy Life. Get yours today. It's available on Amazon. Bishop Mark also has his lessons being offered right now. Give him a call at 268-1078. And he has lessons going all now. And don't forget our folks over at Healthy Cottage. And good morning to all of you who are with us. Let us know where you are, where you're listening, where you're joining and viewing today. And of course, we're looking forward to your comments as we get started in today's edition of Men on Monday and we discuss real intimacy. The folks over at Healthy Cottage will definitely take care of you. So good morning to you again. Good day wherever you are, and to all who will be joining us reviewing later. Good day and welcome. Good morning to Kelia. Good morning to Diana and all who are with us already this morning. Have yourself a good day. And let me shout out all who are celebrating birthdays today too. Happy birthday to all of you. So we're talking real intimacy. Real intimacy. Where's Bishop Mark changing? So
No,
Pastor Edison, are we gonna
somebody wanted to talk to me before the program. They had questions, so I had to get them off the scene.
okay, understood. Understood. So good morning to all. Pastor Edison Bino, how are you today? And let's get started. What is intimacy? And then or should we start with Minister Sinclair?
Doesn't matter, you know. I think ID2 gentlemen would be good to go. But you know, one of the things that is important to do is to start with some kind of definition, some kind of basic understanding of what
Mhm.
intimacy is. So if you were to look it up, you would see that it has to do with interpersonal, emotional closeness. So that and it talks about personal space that can be entered without causing discomfort by any of the other parties to that person. So we can talk about intimacy and we can talk about boundaries because even in intimacy there have to be certain boundaries, what you like, what you don't like. There have to be certain parameters. But we're going to look at different kinds of intimacy because there are all kinds of different types of intimacy, not only sexual. You did mention that, but there's some other areas that we would get into as we continue with the program.
Go ahead, Minister Sinclair.
Yes, please. When it comes to sex and intimacy, because many times people see sex as intimacy, but it should be as like a sandwich. I see it as you should have intimacy before and after. All right. And the thing about it is that I don't think that we have a good understanding of this, the different spectrum of intimacy. Where I remember Bishop gave the definition of it, and it's really feeling what I consider feeling safe being naked. All right. And we're just talking about being physically naked, but that is one aspect of it. But being naked and vulnerable, do I feel safe in your space? And one of those things, as Bishop Edson mentioned, is boundaries. So we think all the time is closeness, but also respecting the different comfort levels with inside of any of the intimate spaces. And we're going to look at a couple of those areas of intimacy. So we could find out. We talked about love languages before and all those things, but today we look at the intimacy and the different segments of intimacy, and really see like you know what I kind of misunderstood intimacy because I was only thinking physical, but we definitely need to understand it as kingdom people. I think it's what affects the church also. Some of us becoming closer in an intimate level. You know, trusting boundaries, feeling safe and naked with our fellow brothers and sisters in house of God.
That's interesting. Understanding the different levels of intimacy because I think we've been conditioned to think that intimacy is only what happens in the bedroom. And you can feel so much closer to a person on a drive through the island versus what happens in the bedroom because people forget that you can also be disconnected in the bedroom. You can be very disconnected, and not be on the same place. So it's interesting to understand that intimacy must happen before we get to the bedroom. I think that we need to understand that that is when intimacy starts to go and it makes a difference in the bedroom. But I don't want us to only focus on what happens in the bedroom because there are different types of intimacy and it can be achieved in different ways. So Bishop Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I also think that you have to understand the types of intimacy too, because it's important to recognize that, as you were saying earlier, Marissa, is not only about the sex. As a matter of fact, a lot of times the women, when you're constant, always complain that the men would want, or they're not allowing, they don't let the fact or would allow a man to treat them, badly in terms of being rough and those kind of things, and then want to have intimacy. In other words, the vertical is very important to the success of the horizontal. And so we need to understand that there's emotional intimacy. A lot of times that is a big problem because you find that women say this, we and men say clearly, the others don't necessarily agree because they always think we are not emotional and we don't cry. So because women come to these preconceived ideas sometimes, they give the impression that the man is not intimate enough. So therefore, that emotional intimacy is not there. Then you have the intellectual, where sometimes a lot of people don't understand that, and it's not that one body is more literate than the other, but there's an element to where people would want to express themselves. They need somebody to be a listener and have that conversation happening. And then we talk about the intellectual, we talk about the emotional, and you want to like is that big word, it is experientially or something, but experiential, where the touching and the the hugging and the actual things that we would have discussed some of the things last time. So it's very important, as the other was saying, that you have an understanding as to what the intimacy means, and don't always think that it just means the emotional or just maybe even the physical. There are other things connected to that.
Well, this is a heavy topic. It's a lot of information.
Most of these
That will be
topics
shared
are.
over next. But thank you very much, Bishop Mark. But it is interesting that the topics that we'll be on these topics, we're actually going to be exploring, cause you to look at some stuff, and I think we're going to relearn and challenge ourselves, because oftentimes we have just learned it at this one level, and that's what we go on. But there's always more to it. So, Minister Sinclair Brown, this is going to be more than a one program. So we're sharing intimacy. There are different types of intimacy. Let's first explore that so that our viewers and our listeners understand that. Intimacy, different types of intimacy. Go ahead.
I thought
Sorry.
Minister Sinclair would jump in there. Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah, because right, one of the things is there was something I used coming across fire, which is so you can remember, but then they add on the financial, and Bishop Mark did mention the whole experiential or exploration, which can become a subset of the recreational. So there's six that we want to look at, and one of the things we'll ask people also is from 1 to 10, what they're experiencing, or 1 to 5, use a scale so you can have a gauge of what we experience as far as intimacy is concerned. So we talk about physical intimacy. One of the things with physical intimacy is you have to find a level of that person that you do find attractive. Yeah, people might think it's shallow or something, but no. If you don't like the fat guy, you don't like a fat guy. If you don't like a fat girl, you don't like a fat girl. If you like this, you like that. Complexions, all those things. Those are variables that we must understand is part of your intimacy. Yeah. So there's some girls that like a plus size girl and don't want her to lose weight. So when she started lose weight, it's like I didn't want a skinny girl. I would marry a skinny girl. All right. So you know what I mean? There's that variable where we talk about looks and the physicals, and also embedded inside of the physical is also we talk about love language, holding hands, hugging, a kiss, making love. We're designed to touch people. That is the truth. Maybe understand the whole holding, hugging. Up to now, the sadist cannot really understand why a hug feels good. It doesn't have right. So that the evolutional theories, as far as the evolutions and stuff like that, where they they try to understand all the different variables, but they cannot understand why a hug feels good. They can't. They can't explain. I mean, it is a program where we are grown people, but the no scientist still cannot explain why the clitoris. They cannot understand that because it does not fit into the evolutionary theory, because it's only designed for pleasure. So there are things that are based on physicality alone that we need to find attractive. So we cannot distinguish or not see it as a variable. But once again, measure from 1 to 10. How important is that to you? One, and how much of that are you receiving inside of your relationship, or how it's important to you if you're single? Yeah, we need to have that as a component. I pray you're hearing me better now. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll let you
Minister
know.
Sinclair, we're hearing you. We're hearing you. But one of the questions I have for you, yeah, because when we talk about physical intimacy, what happens when people go through biological changes? Because you mentioned that you have the fact that the person loved the plus size woman, And then
Mhm.
the woman starts to lose weight. Maybe she's health conscious and wants to,
Yes.
and so on. And when those physical changes happen, how then can the couple achieve now that level of intimacy when the attraction factor is not the same?
Right. And that is a good point. And that's when you got different levels of intimacy. And that's a very solid point because we can, as I said, let's say the guy, as far as physical is concerned, let's say the guy during the marriage, he develops ED. Suppose he's a diabetic and all of a sudden he cannot have erection anymore. If we only had one variable, that's one of the things I love about the Lord, is that we had only one component of intimacy, then the dog is dead, right? Well, sorry, pardon the pun. But I'm just saying to you is that we need to have a different level of understanding when it comes to intimacy. So that is one area. The other areas of intimacy are emotional intimacy, and this is the one that really carries the cake because it's about creating closeness through sharing feelings and thoughts and desires. And this is one of the things that's missing so much, that ability to trust you with my emotions, trust you with my feelings, trust you with my fears, trust with my thoughts, trust my desires. And because let's say that this is wanting, let's say the emotional intimacy now is missing something affects the physical. And likewise, the physical could affect the emotional. And maturity allows us to understand how to dip into each pool. Sometimes everyone is missing, or what we need to do. Yeah, that we say time is that marriage is for mature people. Any relationship actually. So we talk emotional intimacy, as I say, sharing closeness through sharing thoughts, feelings, ideas, desires, dreams, fears, and that builds a level of intimacy. And that is why it is very unhealthy, really, sometimes to get to be sharing some of your feelings and emotions with somebody outside of your marriage, because you will develop a level of closeness and intimacy with this person, and sometimes it be hard to develop over there. So that's one of the reasons you have to be very careful. You have to like, okay, I recognize I feel more comfortable sharing my emotions, my feelings with this other person that is not my spouse. And we can have a level of intimacy that is not physical. So we might figure I'm safe because we have not done anything physical. I have not kissed the girl, I have not kissed the guy. But there's a level of connection there. That's why sometimes a spouse can look and say, well, listen, bro, I recognize it, when you're talking to Susan, something is there, you know what I mean? And if I'm ignorant to that, I'm saying you just being, you know, unreasonable and all those things. But they can see the emotional vulnerability and the nakedness and the comfort level with talking with that person, sharing. The challenges I tell people is that it is easier to talk to a stranger. People talk about, we mentioned in the program, why is it so easy to talk to someone else compared to your wife or your husband? And the reason for that is that let's say you start to get a connection with this person, or but with that person, if we have any of the other connections that we're going to touch on earlier, I mean later, the challenge, because we don't have rent or mortgage or like bill or water bill or phone bill or who didn't clean the bathroom or who left the towel on the bed and who did this last month. Because when you're talking to your spouse, all of that is included in front or in between you and your spouse. You take that away, you don't have an easier conversation with a person that doesn't have that load. And the danger is now you could leave your spouse because you have this emotional intimacy with this person. But then eventually, if you're living each other, those things are going to come into play also. You understand? And then the conversation becomes difficult again. Yeah. So we've only touched on those two. I'm going to just touch the other three and let everyone jump in. So I mentioned physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, the recreational intimacy, as Bishop Mara was talking about, the exploratory intimacy.
Wait,
That's
wait, wait.
spending time with your
Uh,
spouse doing activity. Sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead.
Minister Sinclair, before you move on, you were talking a lot about emotional intimacy. Yeah, and we know that that is particularly important for couples. But
Mhm.
there's some people that have a friend, and there's the friend zone. Because sometimes people think, okay, you could build this relationship with somebody, because we know that friendship is important for a healthy relationship. But
Mhm.
but you may have a friend, but you are not attracted to them in the sense of having a relationship with them. because this could help some people, because some people think that, okay, me and this person are friends, we talk about this, we talk about that, but then really and truly this relationship can't go beyond friendship. So speak to that in terms of intimacy.
I can't go beyond. Explain what you mean we can't go beyond.
That it cannot
And
go,
chooses
because
not to go beyond.
it really isn't going to go beyond the level of friendship. But sometimes people try to force relationships, make them
Oh,
happen where
okay.
they just, even though they're good friends,
hmm
they just don't have that connection to take the relationship and
Right, and
any
that's one of
further.
the reasons. Most likely, is the other levels of intimacy that could cause a problem. And the unfortunate thing there is, if you have a friend and the person, you actually person does have feelings for you, if you're through that friend, you'll back off a little bit, because what could happen is that you could be holding a space in their heart or in
The-
their relationship space, because they're seeing you as that, are they connected to that? And when we talk about emotional husbands or emotional spouse or spiritual husbands or spiritual wives, many even deal with that in deliverance, because that person be occupying space in your garage. The car is parked in the garage, but you're not driving it. So you gotta move the car. You understand? So if you really care with that person, so you gotta back off a little bit, especially if you are in a relationship. Because you could be in a marriage, but this person is your good friend, and they got this intimacy going on with you. So you got your cake in it too. You understand? And then you're supposed to be saying that they might be uncomfortable. They're trying to be mature about it. Yeah, they're trying to mature and understanding, but they can sometimes feel uncomfortable because there's nothing having a friend, but it's the amount of time you spend with this friend. Because you could say, okay, this friend, my friend for a lot of years, given. You come into their lives, given. But if they're still every weekend, oh, we going karaoke, oh, this thing, we got all these annual events going on. No, things have changed a little bit. Yeah, you know how it's supposed. So if that person really respect you, they will back off because they know what our friendship is beyond this. And I hope that answers that question. That's
and
my
that's
question,
where
Mark.
sometimes emotional connections are made, and not even aware that they're made, because you've been investing there, and not even being aware that you've been building intimacy in a particular manner. Bishop Mark, you want to say something?
Well, I agree with all the things that the others have said. But there, we always say that information is important. Um, I think a key thing to seeking to develop intimacy is um, identifying needs. I know we talked about that previously in terms of the green, whatever we talked flags, whatever it was.
Green
You're
flags.
right. You're right. You're right. The
Green
green,
flags,
red,
yes, please.
all the different flags. Um, so it's important to identify, and we always come back to these basic things to developing a positive and a long-lasting relationship. And so, in order to identify needs and so on, there must be a level of communication. Again, communication is a very, very important part. I always say for anything to develop, people have got to talk, not quarrel, not try to get their own way, but work the process. Talking, listening. I always tell people write stuff down because a lot of times talk we forget, and as we are discussing, write the things we want to talk about, or things you will never do. There's certain things you go for, there's certain things you might try, but then there are other things. No. It's important that you know all of these things so you can make a more informed plan, a more informed decision by extension of plan. Because a lot of times we leave things, as we have discussed on this program before. We take things for granted, or we leave things to work themselves out, or we come with a preconceived notion as we know this person, and a lot of times we don't know them as intimately as we would want to. And so it's important that we communicate, we talk about these things, and we also mentioned last night, it's important that you are prepared to make adjustments. You might not be a touchy person, but you gotta learn how to be, right? You might not like touching up, but you have got to do that if your partner feels that is their way of communicating. So a lot of times I think people have got to realize that in any relationship, especially when it comes to emotional, that it is important not to always seek, or only seek, let me use that word, only seek to be getting. We too much into this getting. I want. If I don't get, I can't give. Let us move to that level of let me see what I can give. Let me see what I can do to make sure that my partner feels that emotional connection. It's called for work, and it's important that people understand it's about the giving. I always say, if you giving, both giving, obviously both are going to receive. That's how it works. 2 and 2 is 4. That is how it works.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to emotional intimacy, one of the things that people need, you need somebody that you could be able to talk to and be comfortable with. And the thing is, there are different levels of communication. And we would have talked about some of the different levels. You have the opinions, you have the facts, and so on. A lot of conversation stays at the cliche, the opinions, and the facts. So sometimes you want someone that you could share your deep self with, that you could share your fears, your dreams, your aspirations, that you could cry with, that you can pour out your heart to. Now, for some people, and Minister Sinclair and Bishop Mark could speak to this. Some people are not as emotional as others, so they may have a difficulty being open, operating at the emotional level of intimacy. They might have okay, they might be okay in terms of expressing intellectual intimacy because it's easy to operate in the world of opinions and facts and so on. But when it comes to emotional intimacy, that's a struggle for them. But I think that all of us need that environment, and I think I'm not sure if it was Minister Sinclair or if it was you, Lady Marissa, when you talked about even in church, there's implication for intimacy, because one of the problems in church, and we don't even understand our faith because our faith is predicated on love for God, love for people. What we need to understand is what that love looks like in a very practical way, what it means to be intimate. And you would know that sometimes in church culture, we tend to more tear down and pull down and destroy, that sometimes do the things that would build up and edify and encourage. And the Bible focuses on the kind of language that we're to use when talking with each other, when relating to each other. And I think that kind of emotional intimacy, if we had that level of emotional intimacy in the church, I think that a lot of people would end up getting delivered, end up getting free, because that's the area where they struggle. People feel alone, and they want to know that they are in a position that they can connect with people and that they're not going to be judged when they reveal who they are. Because sometimes, we have that spiritual image, that image that we present to people, this sanctified type image. And we're not saying that we should not be sanctified. We're not saying that we should not be holy, but sometimes that's a mask, that's a cover up. And inside, you might be hurting, you might be disappointed, you might be discouraged, you might be depressed, you might be burnt out. But being in an environment where you can just talk to people and share your heart, share not only the bad things, but everything else, that is really beneficial to you as a person. Sinclair?
I'm still muted.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm still muted. Sorry about that. So excited to speak. Um, the thing about it, when we talk about, I said there's the six that I really want to mention before we could pull those apart. There's the emotional intimacy. We spoke about physical intimacy, and those are quite correct. Recreation intimacy, and I would say the church, and all these can fit into any relationship, and we'll look at how they work with church also. Recreation intimacy, spending time with your spouse through activities and events. So once again, depending on the personality, some people have a challenge with physical touch. Some people have a challenge leaving home. Some people when they get in the house, that is it. You know what I mean? And depending on the personality type, they might go out and they feel drained, and they gotta come home and and recover, which is okay, but at least they're making the effort. Some actually don't make an effort. Yeah, so the recreation, spending time together, doing things together. Sometimes I saw a couple, they did a very good thing to have this thing you're going barbecue and you drive through that he came wrong with his 4x4. And it's a little scary, but he allowed his wife to drive and stuff like that. I didn't give it thumbs up because it was a way to pull, the relationship together. Because I was like, dude, your trusted wife can't try that backtrack with that 4x4. He was a big man, but you know what I mean. But once again, it's trusting spouse, and all those things are memories. Yeah, well, the number one thing I tell people is even although you're going through challenges in your marriage, let's create memories. That's all life is, memories tied together with time. So yes, recreational intimacy is very important. I'm going to give the other three and then I'm going to pass on. intellectual intimacy, develop a mutual understanding about the important areas of issues in your life. And I also even look at that because if you have a certain level of intellect and you cannot have a conversation with your spouse on that same level, it can be a challenge. It can be a challenge. You know what I mean? The people that can really
That's big.
connect is when they have a spouse that they can learn from each other and bounce things off. If your person has strong on language and your spouse on the green verbs, and that's something that's rub your skin, what I mean, you're gonna feel turned off, or you can't speak to them if you're politically in depth and you can't, get in that with your spouse. There's all that separation, and then you find somebody else to talk to. Yeah. So intellectual intimacy is very, very important. You think that that is not a thing, but that is something I check out even with my couples. Spiritual intimacy and having a similar view or religious belief and observing religious practices. The Bible does speak about this, about being unequally yoked, and I find that we begin to toss that away. But the truth of the matter is that when it comes to spiritual things, if you're about Jesus and you're about the Holy Spirit, and you say, "My Lord, tell me this," and the Holy Spirit, and that person on that same page, even though they're Christian, there's some people that don't believe in deliverance. There's some people that don't believe in Holy Spirit type of thing, that don't believe in speaking in tongues. So you're in there speaking in tongues and praying, and you're just supposed to do this ignorance again, and you find that that could cause a little problem, like for real, right? So you might figure that some people don't believe in a whole set of things, and so you imagine somebody's not even saved. So that is very important because it's a good thing when two people can hold hands and worship the Lord and pray together. One of the things that I use to get people together, when all these other intimacies are challenged, I use spiritual intimacy. If I find that all of these are really low, I go for spiritual intimacy because that's the most important. And I go, listen, let's start praying together. Start praying together, praying for your spouse and with your spouse. And you believe once you start to do that, you find that the other things start to pull in. And this is one of the issues that we have in marriage, is that we don't pray for each other and with each other. Right? And
I was just gonna say that because most couples probably don't even pray together.
No, we don't. We don't. It's a struggle because somebody pissed me off this morning, so you can't pray with them. I can pray with somebody I don't know. But however, the greatest challenge we can have is even worse than that, is when we start to pray with somebody else on a regular basis of the opposite sex. You see, when you start to do that thing, when you all of a sudden you got this sister or brother you're praying with and that Bible study thing, you can do it once or twice, but you're doing that on a regular basis, you're going to get connected to that person. That's when danger kicks in. And that's when many leaders' complaints fall because they have this person that's in their space that they normally spend a lot of spiritual time with. And all of a sudden, girlfriends start looking cute. All of a sudden, Mr. Man start looking handsome. And here's the last one. The financial intimacy. This is a very big thing. Sharing financial situations as you develop a plan for your finances. And those are the 6 as I pass on. I just want to get touch those and maybe we can explore them a little deeper. So Bishop Mark, sorry about that.
Yeah, very, very important. Those things that you just mentioned are very important. And it comes back to what I was saying. Well, if you have people who don't want to sit down and talk to one another, you're going to have problems all the time because, as I said before, you're then moving according to what you think, what you feel, what you want, and so on. And therefore, I reiterate again that communication and talking out things and I always believe in practical, right? So you start to do and have a plan, take charge. Look, these are some things I know, like these are the likes, dislikes, but look, for the benefit of the marriage, for the benefit of the relationship, for the benefit of us, really making one another feel sweet, so that when it comes to the culmination of when we get to that point, now, boy, it can be fireworks, right? It's important that before we get to the fireworks, we got to put in the work that is required so that the display is fantastic. And so I think that it's important that there's a practical side to what you're doing with this thing. Don't let us have this preconceived notion. Don't believe that we know what intimacy is all about. And even say, as you say, I think that because of the technology now and so much information available, you can have a fun night. Call it a fun night, right? Or an exploration fun night where you start to maybe do some reading. Each person go and get some facts about this topic, and then look and see all those things you mentioned there. So clearly different types of intimacy, and then do a little test. In our relationship, how many of these things are present? how many of these things are not present, and how can we work towards implementing them? It's going to take some process because you are a little different to me. You got to understand you love languages, as we said, but it's also a fun thing. It's a way to develop relationship. You talk about Bible study and praying together helps to develop intimacy. Then you start to have a plan together where you're not feeling intimidated, where you're not thinking about, oh, you want me. It's more about, as I said again, the giving. You make that plan and make it fun. So you say, well, hey, that touchy thing in work last week when you started to put up your face when let me touch me here now. You know, you make it a light thing and not too much of a heavy thing, so that now, but you can put at me for a tear on like that. You know, I say, well, honey, you know that I don't go that road, but listen, touch me here, hold my elbow. That's good enough. Don't go, watch it. And you make the effort. And I found that in my own marriage, that one of the things about two things I think made my marriage strong. Well, three things. God first, because my wife is a good Christian girl, But secondly and thirdly is the fact that we were friends first. And then the third thing, we have a lot. Listen, we have a lot of fun. I'll tell you, if I'm a Christian and I am the spirit of my wife on the cross path, I don't give it to people in the church. I would probably hug her together. I'll tell you, hug her on the film. I do that because we do that on a general, normal basis in our home, wherever we go. It wasn't always like that, but we developed that. I know she makes more sport than me. Before, she'd be on the table knocking me, Mark, cool down now, that's enough, that kind of thing. Now she's the joke in the crowd. So it is all about giving. I say that again. When you give, let me tell you, the Bible says better give than to receive, because if you're giving and you're doing your best, Mike can come back to you. Every person is doing the same thing. That is just the arithmetic.
As you're sharing, one of the interesting things that comes to me is the fact that one of the interesting things that comes to me is the fact that friendship is a great place to build intimacy. Friendship is a great place to foster and get to know. And like you say, as St. Clair shared earlier, he shared the 6 levels of intimacy. When you think about, as I'm going to come back to what he shared, emotional intimacy, the physical intimacy, recreational intimacy, intellectual. And I'm not saying we're going physical and emotional first, but there's always that intellectual level, because one of the interesting things is that you will have to have a conversation with a person first to get to know where they're at. That intimacy does not begin by just looking across the room at somebody and gazing into their eyes as if you're watching one of the stories during the day. But it's the fact that there's the intellectual, the conversation that happens, that I realize, are we on the same level? Do we share the same interests? Do we have the same goals, views, or are we on the same path? Having not one, but several conversations will develop that. And as you understand it, then you can probably have your outings. But I believe that friendship is a great place to build that level of intimacy. But a lot of people don't want to go through that friendship stage. People want to get to the next stage without going through the friendship stage. And friendship is important because this is where you're real. You don't get to know what once, come see me and live with me is something, but different. That statement, but come and see me and live with me, 2 different things. But the important thing is that friendship is key. And that friendship even carries on, as you heard Bishop Mark said, even into marriage, because there's a foundation there. To not have that, we don't know what we share. We don't know what we like. I wouldn't know that you don't like holding hands. I wouldn't know that you like to be hugged. I wouldn't know that you like these other things. So it is important to understand that friendship must continue from the beginning, even through marriage. And that's the thing. We must know that friendship does not stop at the engagement level or after you've walked down the aisle. You're still friends after. You often hear people who are married say that he's my best friend, she's my best friend, because they've built that friendship. Go ahead. I think Minister St. Clair wanted to say something. Go ahead.
What I want to say is, I see, and Brad was saying love is the bottom line. I create a loving relationship, and not disputing that. But I do believe that most people, I think 99% of people that got married, they love each other. I don't think that every person, but we find we still get divorced. So what is it that happened? And it's not that people didn't love each other; it's that they didn't have the knowledge, more often than not, of one, what they're getting to, what that looks like, what their parameters, and then the knowledge to keep it. There's some people that divorce and still love each other. Love each other, know they love each other, but they know that we can't live with each other. You understand? Either one of both parties don't have the tools or they recognize no, we're not compatible for each other. Yeah. So the physical is also there. Look, the truth of the matter is, I'm gonna say something. When I look across the room, yeah, there has to be most people there was something physical about them that they saw. Yeah. There's something physical that you saw. You know, there's a spectrum. There's also people that met and they recognized through conversation eventually. Oh shoot, I started to have feelings for this person. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. Okay. Because there's people that connected differently, you know what I mean? And that's one of the reasons. So let's say that you were going out and you met a person, all of a sudden through recreation, you met this person, even at church. You're at church, you're guy worshiping, you worship leader, you and the worship team. We could spend time talking with music and we connected. All of a sudden we figured that we should be in a relationship without looking at all the other types of intimacy. So now we get a financial. I recognize brother man can't put two coins together. So we love to worship the Lord. We love Jesus. But you're a person, when you talk about planning your finances and stuff like that, this person is irresponsible with their finances. There's something that can be a turn off. They're going to be so turned off by that. That is something that is so deep rooted for them that they cannot connect with this person who is not financially responsible. Is you understand? And then we talk intellectual now. So the person is not this person, developing person. They're together. They're trying to get this man or this woman to study, and that's how the juices flow. Go and study, and that person, man, they start studying things. I about die, you know. All of a sudden, there's another turn off. Remember, we met with recreation and spiritual. But we start hitting the other four now. And then let's say now, when it comes to the physical intimacy and the going out and other recreational things now, they ain't fitting. So remember, that I go through. But the things when I'm doing counseling, I try to expose people's dirt. The reason for that is anybody can love someone that they like. But can you love somebody when you can't stand them? That is when love really kicks in. You understand? Because in every relationship, there are things about a person that you just don't like. You do.
Say that again. Can you still love somebody when you can't stand them?
Yeah, of course. And that's the thing. Look, ask any person that's truly in a deep relationship, they got things about a spouse that just can't stand. I pray to Jesus. Jesus, change it. Change it. And Jesus ain't change it. You understand? You try to feel like, so there's it, and that is it. There ain't nothing that happening. There ain't a difference. It's not that the person not trying, it's just they don't have it to give. And it could something that
you see what you just said there?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry. I was saying, you see what you said there, St. Clair? We often make the statement that marriage is for the mature. And I think that, you know, after as I've gone older, there are things, you know, you have friends and they tick you off with. But it doesn't mean that, and that's the thing I think people need to understand. Sadly, that we think that any relationship that, and not necessarily, but especially with marriages, that as soon as there's a challenge, the first thing is to throw in the towel. That's the first mentality. You know, I'm done with this. We're going to throw in the towel. The next thing is that every conflict does not mean that you have to end the relationship. I think we need to have the understanding that I still love you in spite of. I still will be here in spite of. So when you, as you said, when a person is going through a challenge or we meet a conflict, it doesn't mean that Bishop Mark stops loving Lady Kathy because, you know, we had an issue, but rather to understand that this is a conflict here and a difference, and we're going to see it through. I also want to ask this question because I know Bishop Mark wants to say something. Can we have too much of? Can we focus on so much on one level of intimacy that clouds our judgment? I don't know if you just answered that, you know, based on what you were saying before, but can we have more than one level of intimacy where I think that, for example, we're in church and we have these outings and we're having such great fun that this is the one deciding factor that says, this is it. I know I want this woman. I know I want this man, and not think, you know, and have our judgment clouded. Go ahead, Bishop Mark. I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, in relation to what you're saying is that, yeah, I guess you will, as we hear here, you don't always have all in sync, but that is why it's important to work towards this thing, because Sinclair spoke there about he mentioned in his discussion there about finances. I've found over the years that this is one area where you would hear a lady say, vice versa, I love him, I love her, but I can't stand the fact that they don't stick to their word. They don't, when it comes to dealing with the finances, they're all over the place. They get on stingy. They hide out the money. They're not able to stick to their monthly commitments and so on. And as I said earlier, when you don't get this standing up thing done right, the laying down thing don't work. And so it is important, as I keep saying all the time, that these things be treasured. And as you said, Marissa, there, that every disagreement, I've had friends that we would vehemently have disagreements about a lot of things, but we still remain friends. Me and my wife has have many different ideas about different things, but at the end of the day, we let the facts speak for themselves. Or if we plan to do something, can we now deal with it in relation to the cost, so we sit down, and if I find that there's no understanding, or we write it down and we look at the facts for ourselves, because a lot of times in discussing, because of one of the things I want to say is that a lot of people bring a lot of baggage to relationships, and so every time you tell them something negative because they have experienced rejection all their lives, they don't hear the truth of the statement. What they start to experience is, here is another time where I want to get a point over, and people trying to make me feel ever as a fool. You're making me feel ever as an idiot. You think I can't count? You think I can't spend money? And so what happens? You spend so much time trying to deal with that particular issue that you have, that a lot of times it clouds your ability to really hear what is coming out. And if you have an issue with your spouse or your partner, in terms of what Sinclair was saying, where there might be a bit more intellectually efficient, and you are not, then you take that, again, if the problem is rejection, you take that personally, or you feel because you went to Gormere, well, I did, so I just thought I'd advertise there, because you went to Commermere, you feel that and so all these things come because of the baggage too that is there. Maybe one of these times we need to look at how do we go about getting rid of all the baggage that we bring to these relationships, because in conversation, you so much about rejection, and you was hurt, and Elena man, give me again, and all of these things that you have never dealt with, and that in itself clouds the ability for the persons to get the relationship on track when it comes to emotional issues and so on.
Yeah, Marissa, you asked the question if people can overemphasize different areas of intimacy, and the answer is yes. Some people are very caught up with physical intimacy, and that's all they see. So they deal with the attraction, they deal with the physicality, they deal with the touching, the kissing, the hugging, the sex, and that's where they focus, and there's nothing else. They don't focus on the spiritual intimacy, they don't focus on the intellectual intimacy, the recreational intimacy. So then eventually the relationship becomes very one-sided, very limited. So they're not really exploring all the other areas of intimacy. And I like what Bishop Mark and Minister Sinclair have been saying. Marriage is for the mature, in that it requires work, it requires effort. Yeah, you don't just wake up one morning and get intimacy. You have to understand that you have to apply the effort. You got to take different little steps. So if we're dealing with physical intimacy, then it might start with a touch, it might start with a hug, it might start with a kiss, and we build up from there. If we're talking about intellectual intimacy, we set aside time. Maybe start with a little 5 minute or half an hour where we talk and so on. If we're talking about emotional intimacy, how do we connect with each other? Find a little area, share a dream, an aspiration, a feeling. But you have to understand all the different areas of intimacy. You may not understand them perfectly, but if you recognize that there are different areas of intimacy, and that if I am familiar with them and I start to practice them, my relationship is going to be more well-rounded than if I only have one type of intimacy. But I like what Bishop Mark say too, because there are barriers to intimacy. And sometimes people may want to be intimate. Yeah, they've heard everything that we have said and so on, but there is something that's holding them back. And that's where we now have to explore the barriers, the hindrances, what is holding you back from being intimate. Like for example, for me, I am not necessarily that touchy feeling kind of person. That big hugger. Every time I see my wife, I just want to throw my hands around her, hug her, and stuff like that. That might be Bishop Martin. So some people big on physical intimacy is very natural for them. But your home, the background that you've come from, that influences. So if in your home they weren't touchy feeling type of people, all of a sudden you can deliver that touchy feeling type of experience. You don't have to learn it. You don't have to be reprogrammed. So there's a lot that can be learned about intimacy. But we do have to recognize that there are some barriers that have to be overcome.
I just want to share quickly here. I agree. And that's when you think programs back, what I was explaining is that sometimes we look at emotions and we don't understand emotional handicaps, right? Because we figure, oh, I've told you my love language, I've told you this, I've given you the information. It doesn't mean a person necessarily has the ability to do it. And I would say is that we as much we talk about um, emotional health, and thank God we're in this space, but a lot of times still we don't think that we understand that sometimes a person can have inabilities to do certain emotional things. Because as we mentioned, I was saying like I could want to sing. Bishop Mark could come and press the key and say, well, I hear him, but my voice and what I'm hearing and what coming out of my mouth so disconnected. He said, yeah, bro, sit down. So it's not that I'm not trying. You understand? But if you don't have the ability, so a person might understand, oh, he can't sing or he's tone deaf. Fine, we see as a skill. But when it comes to emotions, we don't have that same grace and understanding. So there are people that have something called disassociation, which means they're disconnected sometimes in different areas of their lives. So if we talk about physical intimacy now, if it comes to sex, there are a lot of people, women, that even when it comes to the bedroom, they want to be with their husband. They would love to be their husband. They hear, yeah, this is important. They have all intentions to, but when they get there, they are disconnected from their physical body. So although they may be giving their body to the husband, they're not connected in the body. So the husband's still not getting that emotional response from her. So then she's frustrated because she's trying to give him what she wants. So physically she's there, but he can feel emotionally she's not there. She's not responding. So all of a sudden now she's crying, he's frustrated. So that was saying that I share with people is that we are sharing a lot of top layer information to help you. That was a please take notes. But the real meat of it is spending some time with some person like coach counselor to get at the root, because as Bishop Mark said, there are barriers. And so maybe sit and think we're having the same conversation and we're not. Oh, my husband, he don't do this, or my wife, she don't do that. And that time the wife trying her best or the husband trying his best, but they don't have the same measurements. Everybody cannot run like Usain Bolt. I don't care how hard you train. You understand? Shaq, I don't care if Shaquille only want to be a jockey. I care how he believe and wish upon a star. He can't be a jockey. You understand? And we have to get away from this nonsense. Oh, if you try hard enough, you could do it. You can't.
Neither,
Right?
neither,
That
neither can I think. I can never, I
me
can never.
neither. I didn't want to squeeze me in there, so I wait for somebody else. Let me hear about.
Horse feet around. I'm telling you, for obvious
You
reasons.
understand? Any horse, see me the horse won't cry. You understand? So it doesn't. So Peter, you try your best. That's stupid. I mean, allow a lot of this Disney information to come into our households. Like to emerge from mature people. And some may share people that your husband is trying, he just don't have it. The same as say, listen, buddy, I know you don't have it. I know you may be handicapped, you may have disability, you may not have two legs emotionally, but just don't sit there. Get a wheelchair, get some crutches, get some prosthesis. So that is all I'm asking. Emotionally, don't just say, "Oh, I don't have it," but try something. By the same time, the expectation of expect his guy to run or to do that he doesn't, or the girl, and that's where it'd be good if we do touch on barriers where it can be emotional, because yes, we could give the love languages, which is beautiful, but can that person give that? And Miss Anne, I must say, even getting help, something doesn't help. This is where maturity comes from right there. And let me just touch on it quickly. As Bishop Esther mentioned earlier, let's say that the person has a physical disability and it's something that you like. There's danger help. It is what it is. And sometimes we have to
Can,
embrace
can you live with that deficit? That's the question.
as maturity does, because you go beyond what that was saying. Look, one of the reasons that you see three of us here married, you want to know was the common denominator? You know the common denominator? Understand? If you look and see, all of us are studied guys. And you know what studying does? It causes something called sacrifice. You're investing in the future. You gotta do without something. You gotta go without in order to achieve something in the future. It not be better than each other. All we got different personalities. We all got our issues. But we are willing, and that is not just with our wives, there's the other areas of our lives that you have to understand there's some things that you can't get. And the number one issue I tell you that I have with women, they say you cannot get it all. The number one thing that makes men different to women, there's a very small kernel. Men already know we can't get it all. So we're okay with that. Unfortunately, a lot of men think that they can get it all. And when other things are missing, they figure if you try this, you try that. And then many times I have to say, listen, this is the guy. There ain't nothing else. So you tell me I gotta stop with this? Days it. And
You know, I
because
hear you.
men don't say what we are missing. That's the difference. Men don't necessarily come and say, oh, we missing this and da da da. Trust me, if we wanted to, we could talk about all the things we miss in our marriage. But we're okay with it. We recognize, you know what? There's the girl. She frustrates me, but I choose the girl. And this is the number one thing you'll find, that we don't need other confetti things to make love to our wives. We like the girl, we make love to the girl. Women lose interest faster. So all of a sudden, no, we gotta do a dance, we gotta do movies, we gotta carry flowers, we gotta do this, we gotta do a massage. The guy trying to figure out, wait, I'm not all you want. Like I thought that was it. We don't need confetti. We choose the girl. Trust me, girl come to the bathroom. We want the girl. That is it. And so the truth thing might try to get me to understand is you can't get it all.
Sinclair, a little confetti does help from time to time, though.
Yeah,
Just so you
confetti,
know.
of course. We all want confetti.
I was
Really,
desperate.
really can't play with the confetti, Bishop. Sometimes a lot of confetti is good. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, the idea we just choose the girl.
I was gonna comment, but I'm gonna leave that right there. Go ahead, Bishop Mark.
No, I was gonna leave it there, though. But he's so correct. A lot of times the ladies, boy, gotta get so much stuff before they can be ready. We guys, we choose you, love you. Come on, honey, let's go. But we understand though the importance of the preamble, and I think we as men have to recognize that it's very important that we supply, we seek to meet those needs of our ladies, because as the leaders, I always tell men, the Bible says that we should deal with our women according to knowledge. And therefore, what that does is put the responsibility on us to be leaders, not bosses, but to be leaders. And a great part of leadership is being able to analyze and quickly decide on the circumstances and work towards solving it. Which sometimes means that we have to hold back. And I'll leave this one thing with you. Remember early, about a year and a half or 2 years into our relationship, I remember my wife saying to us, saying to the group at a barge ministry meeting, she said, my husband is kind of a perfectionist, and he might require from me 85%, 100%, but I might only be able to give 85. And they had discussions around it and so on. And then that played on my mind. What I recognize is in any exam, 85, 90% is a pass. What we tend to do is that we work so hard on getting that 10%, you see, out of the baggage, out of the rejection, out of the things we bring into the relationship. We fight so hard for that 10% to get everything perfect that we do not then have an appreciation for the 90%. And from that statement, I would try, if I see areas, I would speak to my wife, but I never try to fret. So I would stop my wife from doing her nails, quarrel about whether she do her hair, because these are things that we as leaders have to understand. That can happen, don't care what we do. There's that session, see, Ruba, generally speaking, women can want to take care of themselves, budget for it. And so that is how that helped me. And I say, for now, I'll pray about the 10% and thank God for the 90% that I got 28 years later. Thank God for wisdom.
Wow. Look at this interesting comment here on our screen. I don't know if you're going to address that because it's now 10:02. Quite interestingly, there's so many questions that I want to ask, from Sinclair talking to the fact that you're in a relationship. What happens if there's a deficit in the intimacy area? You need this thing. And he said, about learning to adjust. That is quite interesting. But then what happens if someone feels as if they're constantly adjusting or trying to make room for something that is not being met, and then being kept in a relationship where they're not fulfilled even 50%? That's an interesting question. I also want to talk about the fact that building intimacy requires two people who want to build it. It can't be only one person building that intimacy. But that means that you are trying, and I especially talk about this on the physical level, because there are lots of people who think if they give sex to a person that it builds a connection, that they've got the person, and that's a life from the pit of hell. We know that. So understand that it's not only, and it does not only mean sex, it could be intellectual too, because you could be the one giving out in all areas, and then realizing that you're not compatible. You could be the one saying, let's pray, let's have devotions, and you're the one putting out there, and the other person is not interested in even having that, as Sinclair said. So we need to pay attention to these things and recognize that it must be a mutual effort on both parts. It cannot only be one person, it has to be both people who desire to have this intimacy. And I think we need to realize that nobody wants to be in a relationship with someone where, it's only them giving, and the other person is taking. What kind of relationship is that you're in? And we talked about friendship. It's important for friendship to be there. It's a foundation to build a great level of intimacy going forward, because friendship does not end after marriage. Actually, friendship is what will keep you after marriage. Friendship does not end because you got proposed to, you walk down the aisle. It continues to grow. I think we have any closing words before we say goodbye this morning. Anyone wants to jump in and say anything?
Let me say something real quick, because sometimes we don't recognize the impact that we're having, even in the area of intimacy. Let me give an example of intellectual intimacy. I would have preached yesterday, and I would have shared certain points in my sermon. Pretty good points. My wife told me afterward, hey, it was a good sermon, and thinking, made me feel good about myself. But this morning, she is doing her staff meeting. She's supervisor and so on. She's doing her staff meeting, and lo and behold, the same points that I preach, my wife just blazing them and sharing them and taking ownership of them. And I said, "Whoa, look at this!" My wife just carrying my points and just sharing them with her staff. But and the same technique that I was using, where I asking the congregation questions and they're talking back to me, she's doing the same thing. So you see sometimes how that transfer can happen, how you can build intimacy, and how it could be manifested in indirect ways. Not always, it's not always a direct thing, but even in indirect ways, you can see, the impact of intimacy.
And it builds the relationship. So that your effort is being, and that's something I've learned about men, especially you guys. You guys are all ministers in your own right. When you see that thing being regurgitated, when you see that information being transferred, it knows that you are making an impact, because men called to lead. So you really want to know that you're making that impact. You don't want to have your spouse not taking anything from you. Could you imagine sharing all this knowledge and your wife not being not growing from it? You're like, it's almost a waste. But that's the first person you really want to impact. You really want to impact with your knowledge. So well done. Props to you, Bishop Edison Bino. Hey, Sister Phil. Go. All right. So we're getting ready to say goodbye. 10:06 right now. That's it this morning. That has been today's edition of Men on Monday. We've been having a bit of some internet issues. I'm sure you guys can see it. So I really want to share this clip, taking from that Minister Sinclair shared. It talks about the levels of intimacy: emotional, physical, intellectual, financial, spiritual, and recreational intimacy. I will share this also on our page. I'll share it on our I don't know if Minister Sinclair can share it, Pastor Bynum. I don't know what's happening with my email this morning. Not able to get into it, so we can have him share it on our page. Or
Yes, we still work on that.
Right, so we can actually look back at it, because this actually caused me to realize, can you imagine sharing all that with a person and not even be in a relationship with them? No, that's crazy. That was really, really interesting, that you can share this with a person and not be in a relationship. I'm not talking about physical in terms of the sex or anything like that, or the financial where we are making decisions to buy a house or so forth. But you can actually share this with and have a good friendship with people, so you know the level of intimacy that you've been building. So it's quite interesting. Some good knowledge shared today. I hope you guys have been impacted. I hope you've looked at intimacy differently, because I certainly have. I've certainly looked at intimacy differently. And then we looked at the different levels. Is it commitment? Is it passion? Next week, Monday. Thanks, Bishop Edison Bino, Minister Sinclair, Bishop Mark. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Men on Monday. Don't forget that Bishop Mark has his lessons. Feel free to jump in. I know some people have been calling me, asking me about it. So make sure you get on board with Bishop Mark. And we know that CXC is just around the corner, and he'll help you get settled and answer any of those maths questions that you may have. Not me, but Bishop Mark. We have Pastor Edison Bino with his book. You know that he is the author amongst us, along with Bishop Mark, but he's compiled so many books. If I'm telling you, we're looking forward to more of those books coming forward in 2022. 8 success factors for a healthy life. Check it out on Amazon today. And Healthy Cottage, helping you to keep that body, that temple healthy, as God has called us to. It's not only about massages, but he'll help you to regulate what needs to be regulated, help you choose your diet, get on track, health-wise, exercise-wise. Minister Sinclair Brown. To you, gentlemen, and to you, our viewers, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Men on Monday. That has been our show. Have a great one. I'm Marissa Boyce. Bye-bye. Until next Monday.